You cannot argue with me that this car doesn't look sick. 1960 El Camino. So this car was built for a phenomenal customer of ours, Barry Bloomquist. Believe it or not, probably our first customer way back in the day, 18, 19 years ago, something like that. So I think it takes some great visionaries or just some awesome dudes to really see the potential in this build, this body style. Because believe it or not, my brother and I, we purchased this car originally, like, man, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, down in Good Guys, Texas. And we owned this car for a number of years. Sold it to another great customer that we're finishing up a car right now for, who ultimately sold it to Barry. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that obviously have impeccable taste and knew the potential of this car. So Barry's a pretty hands-on guy. Barry's an outstanding customer. I've said it a million times. He purchased this car and did quite a bit of work on it himself. So I can enjoy driving it, and I'll take credit for all the awesome things that it does, but I can't take credit for it all because Barry put the work in, right? Barry bought this car, took it home, tore it all down, methodically itemized everything, sent all the trim out to be plated, sourced all the components. So Barry did a lot of the hard work for us, made our job pretty easy. Worked with his painter to get the body all sprayed. Prior to that, he brought it to us. We did all the fabrication, got it mocked up, set it on the chassis, had everything ready to go, and the project went awfully smooth. Kind of worked well because we were able to get a pretty high-end, cool-looking, fully painted car out on the road, you know, in a reasonable amount of time that we didn't have to do all the heavy lifting. So let us stick with a lot of the things that we're great at with our Survivor platform and just move this through that process. So big thanks to Barry Bloomquist for all of his hard work. Kind of a Survivor Plus type build where it's nothing crazy over the top, but it is painted. It's got some pretty decent fit and finish, not show car level like over the top stuff, but a great step up from original restoration on the exterior of the car. So Barry was heavily involved in this project, outsourced the paint from a friend of his that did a beautiful job on it. So it's every bit as nice as you'd want a custom car to be, but not too nice to where you're afraid to drive the thing. So great car to cruise. And should probably spend a little bit of time talking about the chassis that's underneath it, because that's what needs to be done to accomplish this awesome drivability. So this particular car is built on a RoadsterShop Fast Track chassis, and it's essentially a stock production chassis. And we use this opportunity, like we do with a lot of other cars, to just kind of update the product and improve it. So as we get better, so does the product. As our scanning capabilities get better, our engineering gets better, we took this opportunity to go back, refresh some of the stuff on this chassis, and just update a few things. I'm a firm believer in getting a little bit more shock stroke out in the back of some of these long wheelbase, heavier cars. So we were able to accomplish getting a 5-inch stroke RS SV shock out back, and did a little bit of spring tuning, and the result is just phenomenal ride quality. I mean, this thing just soaks up everything in the road. Super fun car to drive. I've been piling the miles on it, trying to expedite the break-in process here so we can get this car down to Scottsdale, Arizona, so that Barry can enjoy it this winter, because we certainly can't enjoy it here. This chassis, man, it does everything perfectly. I would be thrilled to take this thing on a road tour and just start piling the miles on it. Front end on it, no upgrades. It's our standard steering rack, 4.0 RS SV shocks up front. But what that Fast Track chassis really does for this car, it's got sports car like handling, and at the same time it's like just eats up the bumps like a luxury car. I mean, it's swallowing stuff in the road right now that would normally really disrupt a car. So it makes for just an all-around fun car, because you take this 60 El Camino, which is a giant boat, wildly poor performing car, and it's shocking. Like, it puts a smile on your face because you cannot believe the things that you can do in this car. How nimble it is. For a car that's like 120 something inch wheelbase, it is as sporty as jumping in like, you know, a modern sports car. This particular build, not a huge tire package, but 275s, I believe, out back, 265 up front. We didn't want to tub the car. They've got some really nice shapely factory tubs in the bed. Didn't want to disrupt that, and we're trying to keep this thing on a reasonable budget. So we moved through it relatively quickly, but that 275 still provides adequate traction, sticks good, gets us some sidewall in the back. 18s up front, 19s out back. It's an RS6 wheel that Chris Gray actually designed years ago for another project of Barry's. It was Barry's 64 Vet that this wheel was done as kind of a one-off for, and it ended up being a super popular wheel, landed itself in the Forgeline catalog, and I've seen this wheel pop up on countless builds. We've used it probably half a dozen times now, and really cool look. It's got an adapter that bolts onto the hub to accomplish a true knockoff. So it uses like an Allen stud, fasten that hub onto that, and then boom, the wheel registers on it. Put your knockoff on. We safety wire them, number one, because it looks cool. Number two, because it's a safety thing. The El Camino provides a lot of space underneath. So for a touring car, I think we've got like a 25-gallon big stainless tank out back, factory GM Camaro SS pump in it, Vaporworks PWM module. So it is a returnless system, and it's feeding a GM LS3. Nothing crazy over the top, but just reliable power. 480 horse, so it's kind of the upgraded power plant in the LS3 lineup. GM's been just slashing things like crazy, but the motor super mild to where it puts around town no problem. It doesn't buck or do anything weird, and it's got just enough power to give you a little thrill. It's backed with a Bowler T56 Magnum. We source all our T56s from Bowler, depending on the horsepower range of the car. Mark puts together some really good packages there. He's got his carbon upgrades. He's got his different stages for different power requirements, but you get a lot more peace of mind when you're grabbing that trans from Mark that you know it's going to be right. You know, over the years we've had some hurdles here and there with some T56 stuff, but anytime I'm getting stuff from Mark, it's the right package. So great resource. In between that transmission, that motor, we've switched back to the McLeod RST clutch. So we were playing with some of the tilt and stuff for a while, and if you got a big horsepower application, I don't think you can beat it. Not wildly stoked about the street manners of like putting around town with it. So stoplight stuff, stop and go traffic, I think the McLeod is definitely a advantage in my opinion. Took that 480 horse motor, bone stock crate, gave it the vintage treatment. It kind of just basically checked all the boxes with Locar on that. So it's got their 348 409 style valve covers, their air cleaner adapter, their air cleaner. So it's a pretty quick, relatively inexpensive way of dressing that motor up to make it look super cool. And that top mount intake, what we do is we take a lot of those cast parts and we Cerakote them. So you can use an air dry Cerakote that doesn't require any sort of super high temp oven. And it's very close to a cast finish, but it just cleans it up, makes it like a little bit nicer. I think it's a good little secret of the pros. The Cerakote stuff has no build thickness on it, so little sandblast, hammered on there, not much different than spraying paint, and you got some really cool finishes. This particular car is running a Holley serpentine drive, which the Holley drive works great on some of these more vintage style cars. I like the kind of all-in-one bracket kit that's cast right there into the water pump. Anything big horsepower, anything supercharged, anything high performance, always getting a Wagner drive. This just fit the bill for this particular build. CNR radiator up front, all the mechanicals are standard RoadsterShop stuff, so whether I'm driving a Survivor car or some crazy over-the-top build, same cross-flow radiator with our 19-inch PWM fan, all the same coolers up front. So this is just a killer build, very unusual car, which if you look at the styling of this, look at the stance of it, hopefully Elliot can take like the nonsense I'm mumbling, cut this up and put a side-by-side before and after picture, because it's a great example of what you can do with like just kind of an unusual car. There's not a ton of these built. I mean, we've done a 59 years back, done some of the later El Caminos, but this 60, not a wildly popular car, and when you look at it at its stock ride height, it's not super flattering, but somebody must have been thinking 40, 64 years ago, there's gonna be some dude that's gonna start making these bitchin' chassis in the future, slam these things on the ground and put big wheels and tires and make it like really perform, and it's going to look so fucking sick. So I think they took that into account when they designed it, because just lowering this giving it the right stance and putting the right wheel and tire package on it, damn is it cool. And these 59 and 60 El Caminos going down the road, these things are like freaky looking because they almost have that like jet age style. It looks like a hovercraft. They're so low, they almost don't look drivable. And I think it's just because the massive width, the big wheel openings in the front that really shroud, I mean, they cover up a lot of the front tire. But at the same time, you've got 5.5, 6 inches of ground clearance on this thing, and this car can be driven anywhere. It's definitely not a car that I'm concerned with pulling in driveways, going over small speed bumps. All right, let's jump into the interior on this thing, because despite looking pretty stock, there's a handful of cool little mods in this. Nothing wildly over the top. We talked about it in the Nova, utilizing these factory underdash, like aftermarket, or some of them were from the factory AC units. So this particular car came to us when we purchased it with this Frigette aftermarket AC unit made in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Barry did a quick little restoration on that piece and it looks brand new. Built a manifold for the back, took all the Gen 4 ductwork from the vintage air unit, ducted into there, and you get some pretty good flow without having to put any AC vents in the actual dash. These cars are not the greatest for trying to package those AC vents in the corner. I don't love some of the simple under dash kits. So this looks factory, looks appropriate to the era, and it works really good. Center console wise, we ditched the factory bench, and Barry actually had these buckets left over from a previous project that we did, a 62 Impala, and integrated those into this car, which leaves you big open space in the middle that now you got to fill. So it's a factory Impala center console as well. Nice restored piece. Again, a piece that we've used in the past on one of Barry's builds is the shift bezel. So that's a piece that we CNC in-house and just closes up that factory 4-speed offset pull and allows you to put the T56, which has a more centered shifter. We jump it over to the driver's side of the shift mechanism just to kind of offset it just a little bit. Beyond that, I did it tilt column with Dakota digital RTX gauges. One of the little tricks, which I would strongly recommend that everybody does if you've got a 59, 60 Impala El Camino or a 57 Chevy Bel Air. A tilt column will land directly in your sternum right here. So typically you'd be in this car, and if we put this column in factory as a bolt-in, I'd be driving this car about like this. What we did is we cut the cluster, and I do the same thing on the Tri-5 Chevys, 57 primarily, and we gained about 2 inches to shove the column forward. So you might either want to start with the retrofit column or just pull your own measurement, trim that thing back. We took it about as far as we could before you get into the actual gauge, the round portion of the bezel itself, but it helps out tremendously. The steering wheel that sits on the end of that column is a shrunk down 5960 Impala type wheel, so I think it's about 14.5, 15-inch diameter. Styling wise, you can't beat it. You got to pull the kind of cheesy little center emblem that comes factory with it and replace it with that factory Impala emblem to just sauce it up a little bit. Beyond that, I don't, the vintage car stuff, we've done so much with all our Survivors and into the Legend trucks of really working with some of those Lakara wheels and hand wrapping a lot of our custom wheels that I don't love the little dainty steering wheel. I do like having a little bit thicker grip on that wheel. Ergonomically, they just feel a little bit nicer. Other than that, and the interior is pretty straightforward. Our man Steve knocked this one out, so it is all leather, custom carpet kit because the car does have a tunnel in it. Behind the seats, it's got some access for the battery tender, a little bit of storage. These El Caminos, they've got this package tray that occupies a decent amount of space, so kind of useless space unless you open it back up and throw a little storage in there. Talked a little bit about the simplicity of this. Crank windows. I'm down with the manual windows. This thing's just so damn wide, I can't reach the passenger side. There's good things and bad things about power windows and manual windows. They're cheap. They work really well when they're manual. The problem is, this is a wide ass car, and I'm a little dude, so I pretty much can't reach the passenger side. Hey Chris. Pedal assembly in it is our standard RS billet pedal assembly, which makes driving all these old cars an absolute thrill. The ratios are kick-ass. The pedal feel is so good. If you do feel like you're a sports car driver, you want to play race car driver, you can heel toe these things really well because the placement is spot on. Ergonomics are all good, like shifter lands right off the steering wheel, pedals feel great. Car just overall is a nice, comfortable car to drive. And this is kind of our standard little windy road back here. And now we can put this thing through the paces a little bit and enjoy that fast track chassis. We'll take it a little bit easy because at 23 degrees, traction minimal, but long wheelbase, we can afford to let her step out if need be. Now that is crazy that we are doing that in a 1960 El Camino. I am about to drive right through the back of Chris's brand new fancy Range Rover. That's quite the high performance automobile, and I think I should have taken him on the inside on that one. This is a fun car to drive, man. You can't fake it. And if they put a smile on your face, that's when you know you built something cool. If I enjoy it, I know the customer is going to enjoy it. That quick maneuverability when you're turning around is just one of the nice things about that McLeod clutch, along with this pedal assembly, is that the car's super easy to manage. Doesn't do anything weird. I might take that back about that 480 horse LS3. This thing's a little bit of a ripper. I mean, it is getting it. Who thought you could do that in a 1960 El Camino? Unbelievable. Damn, that's fun, man. This car is wild. Totally unsuspecting. You know, you might see this car going down the road and think that, like, oh, that's like an airbagged old car. But what it can do through the corners is mind-blowing. It kind of lands in that sweet spot where it's not a lot of horsepower, but it's enough. And it feels fun, it's exciting, right? It doesn't do anything crazy. It's not breaking the tires loose, but it is just moving. As I'm running this thing through the gears, you kind of notice the sound that it's got a good exhaust note when I've got my foot in it. But you know, here we are at 2,300 RPMs, 50 miles an hour. And if you're not really in it, I mean, zero drone, the sound almost just goes away, which smaller horsepower motor, so it's 2.5-inch stainless exhaust, Borla mufflers. We do our Helmholtz style resonator out back, which really takes the drone out of it, which is critical, right? I expect that if I get this thing delivered immediately, that Barry is going to send me a really nice Christmas basket. I'd like a Harry and David basket with maybe some wine, maybe some of those fresh pears, I don't know, chocolate, something. I think the RoadsterShop team knocked it out of the park on this one, man. I am super proud of the boys. This thing's badass. Chassis killer, build quality spot on. Great partnership with the customer, Barry, helping out, so I'll enjoy that wine with Barry once he provides it. And I try not to read through too many of the comments because some of you guys are brutal. And aside from telling me to put my seatbelt on, which I've done, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what guys want to hear. You know, what do you want to hear? What, you want to know something else about the cars? Do something else driving the cars? Chime in. It's the whole influencer smash that like button type of thing. Dude, I'm 40 years old. I can't do all that shit. I'm just genuinely curious if there's something you guys want to hear, because I've done like 50 of these and I'm running out of shit to talk about, to be honest with you. So help me out a little bit. Drop some comments. All right, that's a wrap. 60 El Camino for Barry Bloomquist. Hope you guys dig it. I'm jumping into a legend truck next. Urban Cowboy, baby. Damn, I thought we had a power steering pump going bad, but it's the UPS truck. Sitting over here, trying to mimic that noise. I am stupid.